Great. Welcome everyone. This is all very new for us. It's the first time we've attempted this by Zoom for CPN Women. So welcome and thank you for coming along. And it's obviously very different to what our CPN women have become accustomed to in the office. And it's been fairly eventful since our last event, which was on the 5th of March, and little did we know that it was only going to be less than a couple of weeks later and we were in lockdown. But equally, we're really, really excited that you can be here tonight for our first event by Zoom. And we're obviously going to be hearing from our very own Vicky McDermott live from the stables, which is awesome. So for those who don't know me, my name's Carmela Rayliff. I'm a director in the business recovery and insolvency team at Pitcher Partners in Melbourne. And I'm joined this evening by Claire Henderson, who's the leader of our CPN team, and many of my Melbourne insolvency colleagues and colleagues from across the practice. And so many of us are obviously missing the opportunity to be in the same room and have a drink. We would usually have our welcome cocktail and share with each other. So given the virtual nature of this event, we've also been able to be joined tonight by our colleagues in our member firms in Australia, and we've also have some attendees from New Zealand. So perhaps COVID-19 has some advantages in allowing us to connect in a different way. So to say that 2020 has been a year when connection has been thrust into the spotlight seems to be the ultimate understatement. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented many challenges for us all, as government restrictions have in many cases taken away options for any face-to-face interactions with our colleagues and our support networks. And so like many organisations, Pitcher Partners has been working fully remotely in Melbourne since the middle of March, and given the current situation in Melbourne, probably doesn't look to be changing anytime soon. So it's become even more important for us to stay connected and for those that are able, be willing to support those around us. And we've had to learn how to do this in a really different way given the current environment. And it's coincidental and fitting that today is also Are You OK Day. It wasn't planned when we were looking at the dates, obviously being our National Day of Action, when we are reminded that every day is a day to connect and ask, are you okay? Particularly if someone is struggling with life's ups and downs at the moment. So many of you here tonight will already know Vicky, so we don't need a really big introduction, but Vicky has been a partner at Pitcher Partners for almost 20 years and was our first female partner for the firm. So there's a very long list of firsts for Vicky, and some that are relevant here tonight to us at CPN Women, given that Vicky was the presenter of our first CPN Women event in 2018. And I also believe that Vicky is the first retired partner to leave the calculator and office behind and replace it with a whole new direction in becoming an accredited executive coach and creating her EquiLead leadership program. So I've personally benefited from the EquiLead program and Vicky's mentoring and coaching. I experienced the round yard, which is just behind where Vicky is today, and with the horses firsthand. And after the session, it was quite sort of profound that you were able to walk away and have some really interesting findings about leadership and connection. So I highly recommend the experience. So Vicky, thank you again for coming here tonight. Obviously, we're not in the office, but really appreciate the effort and to learn what you have for us tonight.
Documentary called Bush to Belly. As you can see on the screen, I was associate producer of in 2014. and I started to learn realistically what connection really meant, and particularly connection to land. So I acknowledge, pay my respects to elders past and present, no matter where you are. And I understand we have some people from New Zealand and interstate, and wherever you are, paying respect and acknowledgement to elders of all traditional owners of land. Almost everybody wants to empower others, and about half the people are suggesting that they know how to get power. So my contention is that to be able to empower others, we need to have power ourselves, and I call that me power. So if you give the M power, backwards, EM, what about the ME? So you need to have power yourself to effectively be able to empower others. And how do we get to power? In my view, that's through connection. And if anybody's watched my TED Talk, intention. To me, the basis of power is about connection, which is the content of tonight, and intention. And I came to those realistically through my through creating my TED Talk, and that's what you can see on the screen up there, is me on the screen. And can I tell you just again, other than the pleasure of having Ali in my company right now, I'd rather be on that screen than the sort of setup and nervousness I had in getting to this point tonight. I know it seems ridiculous, but put me on a stage anytime. So what I would like you to do is to think about somebody that has had an influence on you, whether it could be work, it doesn't have to be work, but someone who has enabled you, given you, who made you feel good, basically, who enabled you to be better at whatever it was that you wanted to be good at. Just have a think about somebody who's done that for you. Write down their name. And just a little bit of context around the story of what it was that they did for you, and then how they made you feel. Just a couple of minutes. So there's a dog barking in the background. Now we'll get the chooks in. Now we're going to go into breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, I'd like you to share some of the story that you have just noted down. That's right. Yep. Yep. What was it about them?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. What about other people? Awesome. I'm going to hop out and visit a couple of other people. So I'll see you back in the main room.
Thanks, Vicky.
You're a very good girl, just standing there that whole time, aren't you? Come on. Go. So those breakout rooms are just about ready to finish.
And it's sort of a real combination of that supportive, caring person, and then still wanting someone that is strong and you know, empowering at the same time. So I think it's a real mix of those two, you know, power and sort of being an empathetic, supportive sort of leader, I think.
Absolutely, and it plays basically into my model about. So it's all great. It's wonderful to be empathic, and that's what I could stand here all day and have a nice time patting my horse, or having nice coffees with people, but we're not going anywhere. We're standing still. So we have to have some intention, and sometimes that means that we might need to push other people as well. And that pushing comes in various forms. Could be just an encouragement, a showing the way, a going with you to get somewhere and to get to what I believe is realising your potential for power. Comments on that, please? The lonely world standing a stable lot, and I can't see all your beautiful smiling faces.
My comment really is it'd be interesting to see if men filled this out, how different the characteristics would be.
That's a great question, Gabby. I had to really zoom in then to see who you were. That's a really good question, Gabby. When I ran this a similar exercise just a few weeks ago, and it was a mix of male and female, and the words were pretty much the same actually, and they were accountants. Don't hold that against anybody. They were accountants, and yeah, it was quite interesting. And I think what that is saying to me, supposition on my part, is that when we sit and reflect on the people who have made a difference to us, and we reflect in a real way, so it's probably the same. Those key components of what it means to enable someone else and to connect with someone else, the core ingredients are the same. I've started playing with the idea of a connection equation. I did a post on LinkedIn the other day, and I'm going to play with that a bit more. Being an accountant for such a long time, you always want a formula for everything. But I think the components are pretty much the same. But it's a good question, Gabby. Yeah.
One of the comments that has come through,
yep,
which is that intelligence is not the most important factor.
Yeah. And who's the test? By what means do we measure intelligence? And there's so many forms of intelligence. Emotional intelligence, obviously, which is the one that I talk about a lot. Social intelligence, spiritual intelligence. Intelligence is not a one-dimensional concept. So you might well wonder, well, what do horses have to do with any of this? And I would, for me, it was my interactions with the horses that really brought all of this home to me. So Allie is quite an unusual horse, probably as close to the perfect horse as you're ever going to get. She has basically stood here and not done anything the whole time. God, if you got those two ponies in here, well, they wouldn't be here, they would be somewhere else. But what the horses have done for me is really make me sit and stand back and really listen with everything. So the observations around how and what is important to them if I want to build a connection. And if I want to build a connection, what am I going to do with that, which is the intention part, because we want to get somewhere together. And what is it that I need to do, and what is it that I need to be to enable that to happen? And for those who have been out to my workshops, and I know there's a few of you in the audience, I hope some of that resonates with you around how then, once you've understood or start to do some of those, employ some of those approaches, the impact it can have on you in your leadership and indeed in your life. And I know for a fact that, well, Carmela shared a little of having come out the impact on in a leadership context. And I know for a fact there's a couple of people in the audience who tell me it had an impact on their life outside of work as well, which is also another important aspect, because we are connected beings and we can't be something completely different at work to what we are at home. We need to be an integrated, complete and connected model. And for me, from the connection perspective, and my starting point for my soon to be born connection equation is around connecting with self, about understanding yourself. What is it? What's important to you? You wrote down what was the characteristics of those people and the impact they had on you. So what is it there for you? What are the things that, so what is it that you need to know about yourself? And that's the first part of connection. And my assumption is most people are diehard fans of Brené Brown, as I am. And that's really what she says too. And to be able to connect with yourself, you need to get the armor off. Like, you need to be real. There needs to be authenticity. And so this is the power quotient model that I referenced before. Next one, Claire, thank you. So this is, remember I said, oh, there's a typo there. That's bad. If I hadn't said anything, no one else would have noticed. But if I didn't say anything and you did notice, you're going to say, God, there were spelling mistakes on that PowerPoint. so fess up, here's the vulnerability. So the connection axis is, as I said, at the top of it is it's an empathy line, but if that's all you are, if that's where you are, you're not going anywhere. You have to have a healthy dose of a bit of intention and ego. And for those old enough to remember skyhooks, ego is not a dirty word. We in fact need ego, but there's got to be a balance. And thanks Claire. And in my TEDx talk, I spoke about needing two reins, and as I have Ali here. So if you've got too much of one, so too much connection, you're just sort of standing there going nowhere. Too much of intention, you're out there on your own. You need a balance. Sometimes you need to use one more than the other, but generally you need to return to having a balance of both. And when you've got that balance, you're realising your potential and on your way to power. Now, the next slide, I apologise if it's considered to be a political statement in any way, shape or form. I just apologise because of the picture. Take your pick. So, you know, this on the power quotient, where would you put that? You know, we've got, at the extremes, we've got ego, and other extreme, we've got empathy. Where would we put this bloke?
Ego.
Ego.
Off the scale, yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't that all politicians?
Well, it's interesting. I have an assumption that most politicians start with good intentions, because why would you get yourself involved unless you did? Who would wish that upon themselves, to be in that environment? So, so that's my assumption, as flawed as it may be. So this is ego at the extreme, and this is about authority. This is about power. This is control. This is not the good. This is not what we consider to be good power. It's anyway. I'm not going to say anymore. So next slide, thanks Claire. So yeah, right off the scale, ego all the way, this guy, right off the scale. Now for our next slide, our New Zealand friends. What is this? Can as many people unmute as they would like and just say, tell me what this picture represents to them.
Empathy.
Empathy,
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
empathy.
Yeah.
And connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Compassion, yeah.
Compassion.
Yeah.
And what else did it, what did it mean? So I'm saying that absolute empathy, she didn't stand there doing nothing at the time. She had absolute intention. She was very clear on what those intentions were. She shared them, but she put her arms literally around her people and took them on the journey. So this was absolutely an intention and connection piece. And this, to me, is the ultimate in power. Thanks, Claire. So that, to me, is what the power bit is. So she, no question, was empathic. And she was probably bloody angry as well, but she used it, and it was intentional. And I don't know if it's appropriate to say that, you know, you got a crush on a Polly, but you know, God, I don't know that I don't know. I don't really follow the politics too closely, but everything I see of her, I just think she's the ultimate in what power really represents. And my question is, how do you get there? How do you think you get from her first reaction potentially could have been, and if it were a Trump scenario, been guns all blazing, literally guns out, guns all blazing. We're going to kill every, you know, Australian who's, you know, 5'2" or however tall the bloke is. And, you know, they're all dead, they're all useless, they're all whatever. So that's one reaction, is to be overwhelmed by anger. The alternative is to be overwhelmed by grief and do nothing. So how do you get to utilising both, to utilising that empathy and connection and intention to get to this power. How do you do that? What makes a difference? Can people unmute as much as they can and tell me what they think the difference is?
She's understanding and got compassion.
Understanding, compassion, yeah.
And Vicky, is there an element of that she's prepared to be vulnerable too? You know, not sort of needing to be this really uber powerful sort of approach, that she's prepared to, you know, show some vulnerability also and show that she's just real because her people are hurting. And, you know, I think it's just sort of being a bit real and not needing to be the really, you know, Trump-esque sort of approach to things.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that in that vulnerability, that takes courage, and that's real courage. That's personal courage, and that courage comes from, you know, I would say in the first instance, being pretty certain of who she is and what she stands for. So that, again, that connection to self, and her conviction, and her conviction of values, and yeah, all of those things. Yeah, absolutely. So anybody else, what else do you think makes a difference between the reacting with anger yeah, the two, I think, potentially, if we're using this example of reacting with anger or just feeling helpless and it's all too much. What sort of things do you think make a difference for that?
Well, you've got to have action, and with that action is that you're doing it in an empathetic way, yeah, or with, you know, with an intention to get somewhere, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
With what you're doing, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's purpose involved, yeah, yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, look, she's thinking of other people. When you compare it to Trump, he's only thinking about himself and how things impact on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
She can probably stand in other people's shoes as well, like next to them versus not with them at all. So understands her emotions and how she feels versus so she can sit with others as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Viktor Frankl was he was in a concentration camp during the war and tolerated the most abhorrent conditions. Between a reaction, a response, so what comes in and how we respond to it, is the ability to create a space before we react. And in that space is our choice to respond. And how we choose to respond is where our growth and freedom lives. So, as I said, and I think someone shared just then about Trump, it's all about him and it's immediacy. There doesn't appear to be any thought. There's no space between, well, I think there's a lot of space. I don't think it's filled with much, but there's no consideration, no space given for consideration. It's all reactionary. So this, to me, is the secret to nearly everything. If we just contemplate for a moment or two on how we respond to things and how and when we respond to things, I think it can make a really big difference. And this has been one of my incredibly big mistakes. I tend to be quite a reactionary person. Just ask my kids. I think in the past that I have been quite a reactionary person. But again, I'm going to say that the horses, and maybe it's a bit of age as well, has taught me a bit of patience, and just to realise that by me changing my response, I can change the outcome.
Vicky, I think that our minds are so busy that we don't actually take the time to truly listen to the other person and pause and reflect. And that is why so many of us, me included, respond the way we do, that we don't give ourselves that time to pause and create space.
Yeah.
I've heard it stated before, Jane, from the point of view that we're actually thinking of the response rather than actually listening to what the person is talking about. We're too engaged in trying to create a response.
Yeah, Stephen Covey I can't remember, it's like 1960, I think that book came out, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and habit number 1 is to listen to understand, not to respond. And I didn't see who it was that made the first comment about us all being so busy, and I agree with that. But we have a choice. You know, we need to create that choice as a choice. And in my coaching, what I'm finding is when people say they don't have the time to do these things, by that little bit of pushing and suggesting and having them dig into alternative ways of doing things. In fact, when you make an investment of time, it is an investment and it pays off. So instead of the reactionary part, which may not get the response we wanted anyway, we've got to go back and do it again, maybe a more considered response will get us where we wanted to go quicker. It was a real case where I was a young lawyer and she was being asked to do everything for everybody else, was always obeying and being kind, but her career had come to a bit of a standstill because she was considered to be the person who would fix everybody else's problems. Anybody been in that position?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that too. Yeah.
Yeah, look, just go there. She'll fix it. She'll fix it. She'll fix it. And so, yeah, she became the repository for everybody else's problems, challenges, lack of ability, whatever. So how do you then convert that to something that is real? Because you have to be yourself. You can't, there's only one of each of us. You can't be somebody else. But to realise that this was not serving her, and how does she go about achieving that? And there's I said we didn't go through the exercise at the beginning, but through a process of recognising really what it is that she wanted to do. So she was absolutely on the empathy scale, where it was all about, you know, I need to do it for them and I feel sorry for them. And sorry might not be a great word, but, you know, and in fact, sometimes there feels that there's a reward when you are helping people out, that you feel good when you're helping people out. Well, I do. But where's your intentions? Where's your purpose in all of this if you're the receptacle for everybody else's desires to be helped out? So if you watch the TEDx talk, you'll see that she managed to have Ellie, who was the horse that was here before, walk with her. And what I say is that if you don't, she couldn't drag Ellie along behind her. You can see she's a very small woman, and Ellie's got quite a bit of bulk on her. Can't drag things, you can't make things happen. You have to find a way and make it work together. And in the end, Ellie was walking with her, the steps were aligned, and it was magic. So we won't play that video, we'll click on through. Claire, might need to go 2 clicks. Yeah, back.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this was another example, again, the TEDx talk where I don't know if you ever worked with somebody who didn't think it was necessary to build connections, who knew everything, would come into the office. This example was built on the MD of a building company, where he sent his team out for a team building day. He wasn't going to get involved, and guess what? He ended up in the ring. But his initial reaction was, well, of course, the horse should do just as I tell it to, because isn't that what happens when you're in charge? Yeah, well, what do you think the horse's reaction to being told what to do when Mike in the story had made no attempt at connection? So this was the ego sort of thing. Well, everybody, of course, will do what I want them to. I'm not sure if anybody's worked with people like that. what he needed to understand, as I was saying before, that if he really invested the time and some of himself in it, this is that vulnerability, authenticity part, invested some of himself in the process, in the relationship, in building connection, that he could get where he wanted to go with everybody with him and it not being such a battle. And that's exactly what happened, in fact. It transformed their workplace just by this very simple interaction. Was the beginning of this. Was the beginning of it. And obviously for the TEDx, this is a played out scenario, but you can't pretend with horses. Horses will absolutely react. And this person, in fact, my cousin, he was playing a part, but he's known horses all his life, and he thought he knew horses, but interacting with them like this, and then making the connection between the horse's behaviour and what was happening in his workplace was quite profound. And Jack, that horse with his backside to him, that's basically what he thought of being treated that way. And people tend to be a bit more polite. Employees are a bit more polite because they want to be paid or keep their job, whereas the horse has got nothing invested in the exercise, and they'll just show you straight away what they think, backside and all. Thanks, Claire. So we're at a wrap, almost. And so I hope that what you got out of today is to understand a little bit, and Dr. Seuss is my favourite philosopher. He's not really a philosopher, but he is for me. Is that, it's got to be about you. So you need to know who you are, and before you can really build connection with others. And then one more slide, and this is your homework, because you never get away with anything for free. So the Power Centre exercise that you did earlier, I would really encourage you to now send a letter or a note to the person that you wrote about, even if they're no longer with us. Write it anyway. And tell them, put in your own words, because it's got to be yours, but this could be this could be an example of how you could start. And we know that by the act of writing things down, it commits it to memory, starts creating different synapses in the brain. And then we also know that by expressing gratitude, that has manifest impact on ourselves and those around us. So I would highly encourage you to undertake that exercise. I just want to ask if as many people come off mute as they can and tell me in a couple of words, what would it mean if you got a note like that from somebody else?
Acknowledgement and thanking.
I would be taken back.
Grateful.
Seen with the work that you've done.
Humble.
Humbled.
Or humbled as well.
Confirmed. I'd be really proud. Really proud.
Did anybody else get one of those just then? Like, if that simple act, knowing now that if you got a note like that from someone, and by undertaking that very simple act yourself, you could have that impact on somebody else. How bloody awesome is that? That's connection. And that's powerful. Thank you all so much. There's my contact details. As Carmela said, I've recently retired as a partner, still around, wanting to get to know you all even better. Anything I can help you with, please let me know. And I sincerely thank you for attending tonight. I just wish it could have been with a few drinks and someone giving me canapes. And if you are on LinkedIn, please join the CPN LinkedIn group. I'll give a plug for for CPN, please join the CPN Women group. It's a great way of keeping connected, start building up some materials and points of connection in relation to that. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Vicky, that was great.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Enjoyed this session remotely. Thank you. Normally I can't get chance. It's 2 hours there and 2 hours back.
Yeah,
So lovely
of course.
session.
If you want to write your thank yous in the chat, that'd be awesome as well. But I will send out and ask some questions of you all too. Be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really great. Thanks so much.
And Vicky, we really appreciate your effort with the technology. I know we were hoping we weren't going to be on level 3 restrictions, so that level 4, sorry, so that Claire or I could come out to the property. But we really appreciate the effort, and there's just, so important at this time. And we do have a gift for you, and which we'll send home. We'll send home to you, and and I just think we hope that the LinkedIn group can also generate some discussion, and also we'll look at sharing some different materials and keeping Vicky involved also in the discussion also, which is great. And we obviously if you've come along for the first time tonight and you've never been to, you're not a member of our CPN, please get in touch with Claire or myself, and we would be happy to have you. And well, I guess we're looking forward to having everyone back in the office. But if it doesn't look like that's going to happen at the start of the year, we'll organise another event probably like this again, just to